Hello everyone, welcome to StudyIQ. So till now what we have covered is socio-religious reform movements of 19th century, right? In that we have seen that there are two types, okay? So we have seen reformist and revivalist, okay? So these are the two types of socio-religious reform movements that you can see in 19th century, or this is the broad classification. Now what we have done is we have discussed about reformist movement. So when we discussed about reformist movement, I told you there are reformist movements among Hindus and there are reformist movement among Muslims also, right? Now Hindus, when we have discussed about Hindus, we have discussed about Brahmo Samaj, right? Now more than Brahmo Samaj, we have completely covered Rajaram Mohan Roy in our first lecture. So our first lecture was basically focused on Rajaram Mohan Roy. In that, as a part of the discussion, I have covered Brahmo Samaj also. Then after that, we have discussed about Aligarh movement from Muslim side as a reformist movement. But more than Aligarh movement, we have covered the contribution of Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, right? So this is what we have done in our second lecture. So first and second videos was about reformist movement. Now in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover revivalist movement completely. So with that, this chapter will be over. So when we discuss about revivalist movement, again you can see among Hindus as well as among Muslims. So when we talk about Hindus, we will be discussing about Arya Samaj by Dayanand Saraswati. And when we discuss about Muslims, we will be discussing about Wahhabi movement. Okay, so these two topics is what we are going to cover in this video. And if time permits, we will discuss about Swami Vivekananda also. With that, this lecture will be over and this entire chapter will be over. Now along with this, we have also covered various other movements like Theosophical Society, Satya Shodak Samaj, and Young Bengal movement, etc. Right? So all those things we have covered so far. Now in this video, we will be going to discuss about Arya Samaj, Wahhabi movement and Swami Vivekananda. So let me start off with Wahhabi movement. So we will be starting with Wahhabi movements, okay? So Wahhabi movement was basically among Muslims. Now when we discuss about movements among Muslims, okay, keep away the Aligarh movement, which was reformist movement. But when we discuss from prelims point of view, there are two important movements. One is Khilafat movement. Now we'll see obviously whether there is a connection with Wahhabi movement or not. And then we have a Deoband movement, right? Deoband movement. So basically this is directly linked with Wahhabi movement. So we will see the connection between these two movements and Wahhabi movement obviously. But let me tell you what is Wahhabi movement and the ideology and everything we will discuss in this session. Okay. Now what is this word, how this word Wahhabi came? Wahhabi is actually derived from a person whose name is Wahhab ibn Arabi. Wahhab ibn Arabi. He lived in 18th century Arab. Okay, now in Saudi Arabia. Okay, so the Wahhabi movement is basically named after this person, Wahhab ibn Arabi, who lived in 18th century Arab. Now he wanted to revive Islam and Islamic tradition as in the case of 7th century Arab. Okay, so he wanted to revive Islam. So basically to revive Islam and Islamic tradition as it was in 7th century Arab. When we talk about 7th century Arab, we are talking about those times when Islam was at its pure form. So he basically started a movement. Now the idea is now there are certain practices in Islam which are un-Islamic. So he believed that these un-Islamic practices should not be there and we want to revive Islam in its pure form. That means in the 7th century Arab. The belief was Islam was in its pure form during 7th century Arab when Prophet Muhammad and the 4 caliphs were ruling and living. So you just need to know about the 4 caliphs. I'll just tell you the names. Abu Bakr, in case if you get a question, okay, Umar Farooq, okay, then Usman Affan and Ali Abi Talib. Ali Abi Talib. So Islam was in its pure form in 7th century when Prophet Muhammad and these 4 caliphs were there. So his objective is basically to revive Islam like in the case of 7th century. Okay, so that's why it is called as revivalist movement. So the person who started the movement is Wahhab ibn Arabi in Saudi Arabia. So 7th century Saudi Arabia or Arab was considered as the ideal society, or the practices were totally Islamic. Now there are certain practices in Islam which are un-Islamic. So there are a lot of changes happened in Islam now. So basically they want to revive Islam in its pure form. Okay, I hope the idea is clear. That's the objective of Wahhabi movement. So if I ask you where Wahhabi movement started, it's not in India. It was started in Saudi Arabia. Okay, and by Wahhab ibn Arabi. So the name is actually from this person only, Wahhab ibn Arabi. Now we'll come to India now. Now, when we discuss about India, the people who were influenced by Wahhab ibn Arabi were Shah Abdul Aziz. Shah Abdul Aziz. He was actually son of a famous Sufi saint Shah Waliullah. Okay, so Shah Abdul Aziz. So when we discuss about Young Bengal movement, Henry Vivian de Rosio was influenced by the founder of Young Italy movement, Mazzini. Same way, these people Shah Abdul Aziz and Said Ahmad of Rai Bareli. Now you should not have any confusion between this Said Ahmad and Sir Said Ahmad Khan. So Said Ahmad Khan we have already discussed, and I told you he was a reformist. But this Said Ahmad I am talking about in Wahhabi movement, and it's a revivalist movement. So obviously you can see Said Ahmad in both reformist and revivalist when it comes to Muslims. Okay, so these are the two people who started the movement in India who was influenced by Wahhab ibn Arabi, and they used this slogan jihad, okay, as the political slogan. So what was their objective? The objective was basically fundamentally to reform, okay, to reform Islamic society. But you should not have a confusion that this is a reformist movement. Second is the most dangerous one, or the one which created problems. Okay, so see, you are reforming your religion, that there is no issue. Now here reform means what? In their point of view, what does mean by reform? It is actually revive Islam in its pure form. Now certain practices in Islam are un-Islamic, so you need to reform Islam. That means you need to revive Islam in its pure form. That means whatever was there in 7th century Arab, that was the pure form. Okay, and you need to bring it back to that level. Second one was created problems in the minds of the people, and it actually created threat for other religion also. That is basically to establish Islamic rule. So this is very political in nature. So first one, there is no problem. This is considered okay because you are going to reform your religion. Nobody is going to care for that. But the second one created problems, and all the problems associated with Wahhabi movement will come predominantly from this side. Now let's look at this one. Reform Islamic tradition. What does that mean? So reform Islamic tradition means the tradition of Prophet Muhammad was given importance. Okay, so whatever Prophet Muhammad followed, you have to follow the same thing. So tradition of Prophet Muhammad have to be followed. Then, so basically Prophet Muhammad tradition must be followed. Quran must be strictly followed. Okay, then they prohibited offerings at the shrines. Okay, prohibited offerings. See, basically the point is the offerings were totally un-Islamic. It was an influence by Hinduism. Okay, so there was no such offerings among Islam, so it has to be prohibited. Then festivals like Shab-e Barat were rejected. Festivals like Shab-e Barat, just before Ramzan, there is a festival called Barat or Shab-e Barat. It has to be rejected. So what were their objectives when it comes to Islamic reform? Prophet Muhammad tradition must be strictly followed. Quran must be strictly followed. They prohibited offerings at the shrines because their version is this is an influence by Hinduism and it is totally un-Islamic. Then festivals like Shab-e Barat were rejected completely. So basically tradition of Indian Muslims which they thought that it is un-Islamic were rejected or opposed. See, this is common in all religion. In all religion there will be certain practices which was not or which will not be prescribed in Holy Book, or which will be different from what is there in the Holy Book, because it is actually coming out of with history, tradition, culture and mixing with other cultures, etc. And Islam is also not so different, and when it comes to India, Islam is also not homogeneous. Although it was supposed to be homogeneous, it was not homogeneous because of the influence of many other culture. So what Wahhabis thought is Islam is one and all the Muslims should practice the same. Okay, so their idea is Islam is one and it is a homogeneous religion. So the practice, all should practice one. Now that's not very easy, right? Because different cultural groups and different cultural practices, different language, and it is very difficult also. And it was not ending here. We'll be discussing about that in future also. But this is a point, the first point when we talk about, that is reform in Islam. And these are the reforms that they were looking for. Now if the question is about who started the movement, Wahhabi movement, it's not in India, it was in 18th century Arab by Wahhab ibn Arabi, and the movement got its name from that particular person. Now let's look into the second part which created issues or which created problems, right? That is establish Islamic rule. Establish Islamic rule in India. Okay, now see, nowadays a lot of discussion about ISIS, right? So their objective is basically, or IAS, okay, Islamic State. So their objective is basically the same only, establish Islamic rule across the world. So when you discuss about this IAS in any of your essay or any of your question, you can actually start with the Wahhabi movement, because IAS, their root is basically from Wahhabi movement only. It's actually a modified version of Wahhabi movement. The root, okay, the idea, the central theme is basically to establish Islamic rule, which was there in Wahhabi movement already. So exactly the same as what when we discuss about Islamic State. Okay, so very, very important point. Any question which is related to Islamic State, one paragraph must be about Wahhabi movement and this particular objective. So basically their objective is to convert India as Darul Islam. Darul Islam means land of peace from Darul Harb. Darul Harb. Okay, sorry. Darul Harb. That means the land of non-believers. So now it's crystal clear. This created the problem. Okay. So basically their objective is to convert India from Darul Islam to Darul Harb. Darul Islam means land of peace. Darul Harb means land of non-believers. So India is basically the land of non-believers. Convert India from land of non-believers to land of peace, or Darul Islam, was the objective of Wahhabi movement. Okay. Now for that purpose they formed a guerrilla army. Okay, means an armed militant group. Okay, and then later it led to direct confrontation between the Wahhabis and the state. See, there was a strong fight between Wahhabis and Ranjit Singh in Punjab till 1839. Okay, see, Wahhabis and Ranjit Singh till 1839 they were fighting each other. Then in 1830 they fought a very famous battle, that is Battle of Balakot. Battle of Balakot. See, this area is presently in POK, Pak occupied Kashmir. Okay. Now this battle is very famous because in this battle Said Ahmed of Rai Bareli died. Okay. So why this battle is very famous is basically because Said Ahmed died in this battle, and then he was called Shaheed. Okay. Then he was called Shaheed. So Said Ahmed of Rai Bareli died and he was called Shaheed. And after the death, they declared the war against Punjab as jihad. And this is going to create a lot of problem. Okay, they declared the war against Punjab as jihad. Now, what does it mean? Jihad means, its actual meaning is to struggle. Okay, so its actual meaning is struggle, but this is a word which is widely used, misunderstood by others, and misinterpreted also, and misused by Muslims. So jihad is a word which is misused by Muslims, like here also you can see. Okay, then misinterpreted by many European media and even Indian medias also nowadays, and misunderstood by other religions. Okay, so the moment you see the word jihad, there is something big which is actually coming to your mind. Its actual meaning is struggle. See, it has three layers. Okay, if you want to understand more in detail, it has three layers. Firstly, fight against the evils within. Okay, so you fight against the evils within. Then you fight against the evils of society. Okay, that is the second layer or the second stage. Third stage, fight for the truth. Fight for truth, even if you die. Okay, even if you even if you die, and for the goodness of Allah. And this is what people widely used, misused, misunderstood and misinterpreted, right? So otherwise, if you look into these three aspects of jihad, even Mahatma Gandhi also following the same thing only, right? So the actual meaning is like this, but it was actually misunderstood. Like if you see, there was a battle in 1529 between Babur and Rana Sanga, okay? Babur and Rana Sanga. And it is crystal clear for Babur that Rana Sanga is having a huge army and it is very difficult to beat Rana Sanga. So what he did is he declared the war against Rana Sanga as jihad. And we know Babur never fought for Islam. He fought for himself and he was very desperate to have a kingdom like this. Okay. And when he declared the war against Rana Sanga as jihad, what happened is earlier his soldiers, the soldiers of Babur, were not that motivated to fight against Rana Sanga. Now they are very much motivated and they fought and they won. Okay. So it's like religion will work like a medicine at that time. And when you declare a war against Rana Sanga as jihad, soldiers are ready to fight in any level. So basically to inspire the soldiers, he declared the war as jihad. So this is how they misuse it, right? And even king like Akbar also in 1568, Akbar versus Uday Singh, okay? So Akbar versus Uday Singh 1568 in Chittoor, and Uday Singh was actually son of Rana Sanga. So even Akbar also declared this war as jihad. Okay, so this is what I told you in the beginning when we discussed about jihad. Jihad is a word which is widely misused by the Muslims. So here if you see what we are discussing about is Wahhabis. So Wahhabis is also misinterpreting the word jihad. Okay, and Muslims are obviously misusing and others are basically misunderstanding. So now let's come back to this movement. Wahhabis declared jihad, that means holy war. Okay, in some books you can see it is holy war in northern part of India. So they declared jihad in northern part of India. That means northwest frontier province, Punjab, Bihar and Delhi, etc. Okay. Now after the death of Sayyid Ahmad of Rai Bareli, the headquarter of Wahhabi movement was shifted to Patna. Okay. So the headquarter was shifted to Patna after the death of Sayyid Ahmad. Now, during this time, we can see two important leaders who emerged were Inayat Ali and Vilayat Ali. Okay, so two important leaders, and don't confuse these people with Ali brothers. So Ali brothers will be discussing about later when we discuss about Khilafat movement. So Ali brothers are actually related to Khilafat movement. So these are Inayat Ali and Vilayat Ali. No need to have any confusion. Now they started revolting against East India Company. Okay, so once Punjab is over, once Punjab was annexed by East India Company, now they started directly fighting against the East India Company. Now if you remember when we discussed about 1857 revolt, I told you Wahhabis are fighting against English and East India Company very strongly and much more organized than other rulers, right? Because they have already a guerrilla army, which is an armed militant group, and they have enough support, they have enough weapons, so they started fighting against East India Company, especially after the annexation of Punjab, right, in 1849. So from there onwards, they are fighting against East India Company continuously, and they were much more organized. So if you remember 1857 revolt, I told you two important leaders, Maulvi Ahmadullah and Maulvi Pir Ali. Okay, so I hope you can recollect these two names that we have already covered. So these two are very important or very famous Wahhabi leaders of that time. Now obviously the movement against the state, if you are fighting against the state is having all the support and all the advantages. So finally this movement was crushed by the state. Okay, so in 1859 this movement was totally crushed and the Wahhabi leaders were arrested and hanged. Most Wahhabi leaders were hanged and rest of them were sent to Andaman Nicobar jail, popularly known as Sasai Kalapani. Okay, all these things you know. And in 1872, if you remember, when we discussed about Lord Mayo, I told you a Pathan convict, okay, Sher Ali, killed Lord Mayo in Port Blair in 1872. Okay, so he was actually a Wahhabi leader. Sher Ali was actually a Wahhabi leader. So that actually shows the anger that the Wahhabi is having against the British. Okay. Now after 1857 revolt, Wahhabis were tried in Patna, known as Patna trial. Okay, Patna was in Bihar, and Ambala, which is in Haryana, which is known as Ambala trial. Okay, see, all these things were there. They were hanged, they were arrested, they were suppressed, but the movement never died. Why? Because if something which is based on an ideology which will never end. Okay, so this was based on an ideology. What was that? Reform Islam and establish Islamic rule. So the movement never died. Now what happened is, after the revolt, when the movement was suppressed, they started fighting ideologically. Now, not with bullet and guns, right? So in 1868, they founded Darul Uloom. The word is derived from the word ilm, which means knowledge. Okay, which means knowledge. So Darul Uloom means basically house of knowledge. Now it was set up at Deoband. I have already told you in the beginning of this discussion. Deoband in Saharanpur, UP. Now it was founded by two Wahhabi leaders, Muhammad Qasim Nanotvi and Rashid Ahmad Gangohi. Okay, so Rashid Ahmad Gangohi. So these are the two leaders who started the Deoband school or Darul Islam, Muhammad Qasim Nanotvi and Rashid Ahmad Gangohi. Now, what is the idea of the school? What is the objective? The idea is to teach original Islamic scriptures to young Muslim boys. Okay, so original Islamic scriptures to young Muslim boys. Okay, now this is to be very clearly noted when we discussed about Sayyid Ahmad Khan and the institution that he formed. So when it comes to here, it is only for boys. There I have told you clearly that it is for both boys and girls, and that's the difference. Okay, so original Islamic scriptures means Quran, Hadith. Okay, so Quran, you know, directly the words of Allah. Now Hadith means books having records of Prophet. So Hadith means books having the records of Prophet Muhammad's sayings. Okay, so sayings and practices, actions, etc. So that's what Hadith. Then fiqh. So fiqh is Islamic jurisprudence. So it was basically interpretation of Quran and Hadith by scholars. Okay, so it was actually interpretation. So I hope this is clear for you. So the objective of Darul Islam is basically to teach the young Muslim boys about original Islamic scriptures through Quran, Hadith and fiqh. Now when we discuss about fiqh, there are various schools. Okay, so out of that, Indians basically follow Hanafi school. So Indian Muslims follow Hanafi school. So there were questions asked earlier also. Mughal rulers are the followers of which school? Okay, Mughal rulers, and you will get options like Shafi, Hanbali and Maliki school. Okay, Hanafi is also there. So you need to pick Hanafi school. Now Keralite Muslims follow Shafi school. Keralite Muslims follow Shafi school. And Shia Muslims follow Jafri school. Jafri school. See, basically all these things are named after the scholars. Okay, so they follow Jafri school. Shia Muslims. Shia Muslims. So the first four, these four were by Sunni and Jafri by Shia. See, the point is, we were talking about Wahhabi movement. This movement is still alive in India and Pakistan, but the shape is changed. Okay, and the functioning and the style is also changed. And I told you, if you get a question on IAS, you should definitely talk about Wahhabi movement, and you can write this as the introduction. So after this, there are a lot of organizations in various styles, like for example, if you talk about Kerala, Simi, etc. These are actually inspired by Wahhabi movement only. Okay, so that's it. That's about Wahhabi movement. So you can get objective questions, you can get mains question also from Wahhabi movement. Very important movement, revivalist movement. So if I ask you who introduced the movement, who started the movement, Wahhab ibn Arabi. Later it was taken to India by two Indian leaders. And Sayyid Ahmad of Rai Bareli died in the battle of Balakot, and he was declared Shaheed. And then the war declared as jihad, and they fought against East India Company after the annexation of Punjab by the company. And they were much more organized in 1857 revolt than other rulers, and they were crushed after the revolt, and most of the leaders were arrested and hanged, which is known as Patna trial and Ambala trial. And I talked about Sher Ali. He killed Lord Mayo in 1872 in Port Blair. And then Darul Uloom. Okay, so these are the things that we have discussed. I hope everything is clear for all of you.